It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Esperanza.
Irwin, and how are you?
Full disclosure, there may be a little rust. We took a very, very brief hiatus for a week or so. We've been pretty
from our gig of recording
from this gig, exactly, Esperanza. So we were lamenting when we started. Let's see if there's a little rust, but I'm going to say there isn't, because this is really a fun topic today, and what we're really going to talk about are drinking holes, taverns, the bars of Eastern Long Island. And now there are a lot, and we're both sort of struggling because there are a lot of them, and we have to narrow it down. Just full disclosure, we're not going to delve too deep into Southampton. Sorry, all you old John Duck loyalists, and we're not going to go too deep into Montauk. Sorry to all you Shagwong
or past the canal.
Or past the canal, or the Memory Motel. Sorry, Mick and Keith, but there really are there are so many of them. I mean, we're going to touch on a few, and we sort of have a plan of how we're going to do this. So, but we're going to start off with some that I think resonate with a little bit with all of us. We're going to be a little bit all over the place. It's going to be sort of we're going to go a little freewheeling here.
Little free form. Yeah. Well, after all, the topic lends itself, I guess.
Exactly.
To meandering.
Now that I'm thinking of it,
we're going to bar hop.
We're going to bar hop together. And the funny thing is, we're actually recording this at my usual happy hour.
Oh, yes.
And sadly, I'm sans my normal happy hour beverage.
But, no libation. Oh dear.
Yeah, terrible.
We should have planned this better.
Unbelievable, of all days, not to have a happy hour when I have a happy hour every day. But okay, I guess my water from Costco is going to have to suffice, Esperanza. But okay. Now Sag Harbor, I guess the quintessential dive bar, and I say that in only the best of spirits and in a good way.
With the utmost love and care, yes. With
the most love and care has to be Murfs. The kind of place, we've all been to bars like this. You walk in and your sneakers sort of stick to the floor. We don't know exactly what it is we're sticking to, and we don't want to even think about that. But anyway,
well, for me, it's more Murfs. You could be like the driest person in there, and you'd still feel like you're drunk because the floors are so wonky.
No question about it.
You feel like you're on a ship.
You definitely do. And the smell of the alcohol, right the second you open the door, and even if the doors were open, you smelled it from outside. And again, this, to all you Murfs aficionados, we're only saying this in a good way. This is
absolutely. It's really truly, it's that place that you walk into and you're engulfed in darkness, even though it's like high noon.
The Sag Harbor Village. Now, this is a Sag Harbor Village mayor from back in the day, but I love the quote I read about this, where he said, this was Village Mayor Brian Gilbride, who said, Murfs was the place that everybody went, and most of us were asked to leave at some point. And that really was the kind of place, the kind of reputation it had. I've had some people I remember riding by with. I said, we want to stop for a drink at Murfs, and they would say, I'm afraid, and so they didn't want to go in. But one thing I do remember about Murfs, I think I was on it in all candor, I think I was only in there once or twice, but it had to be the ring game, Esperanza. Now, you've been in Murfs. Now, do you admit to playing the ring game?
I'm terrible at it, but yes, in fact, it is a very popular game, that so much so, and I think the case is the same for you. I found a sort of a replica of that game and bought it for my husband.
You say that is and yes, I think It probably is more of a guy kind of thing. Now, my wife Rachel did not buy me one, but I bought one for myself, and I actually concocted it myself with a ring. Actually measured the ring, believe it or not. It was actually, I measured it at the East Hampton bowling alley. Remember that? It's
Oh,
now
you're too funny.
It's now a CVS. I actually measured it, and I got that ring, and I got some fishing line, and I measured the distance. And I'm telling you, I told this to Esperanza before we went on air, but I would go down and, like, I've had a contractor working down in the basement. I go downstairs and the guy would be throwing the ring on.
Throwing the ring.
I mean, it just is. It just is. It really is one of those games. But that was the kind of place Murfs was. And again, we can't. There are just so many. I mean, the Stephen Talkhouse. I mean, there was McKendry's and Amagansett. Did you ever go to McKendry's?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Same kind of. I was never there, but it's now
Main Street Tavern.
And previously Indian Wells Tavern. But was it the same kind of vibe as Murph? Sort of like or was it a cut above?
I would say it was more upscale.
Real? More upscale than Murph's?
Yeah, slightly.
Wow.
Slightly. I mean, I don't know. I think it just felt newer. You know, I mean, remember, Murfs is like from the 18th century, the building. And so it felt more dank somehow than McKendry's. But
yeah, and Murfs also had a ghost living in it.
I knew about that, but I was learning more about Aggie, who apparently was a teetotaler, by the way. This is a total aside as we're talking about this, but I found that so funny. So that was the reason, probably, like Tom Murphy said that was why she was haunting the place, because she was totally anti-debauchery and alcohol.
okay, I got you. So yeah, so again, I remember McKendry's. I don't remember. I don't believe I've ever been inside. But okay, but Esperanza is telling us that it was a cut above. I don't know if that just means her shoes didn't stick to the floor or whatnot, but okay. I think McKendry's actually had live music periodically as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think I read.
I don't remember that. I remember going there from the Talkhouse.
Okay.
Sort of like the after hours.
Yeah. Now, and good segue, the Talkhouse, obviously. Now that could be an episode in and of itself. So we really
truly another historical building too. Like, all of these really are historic districts as well, which is part of our, whole passion here on our Hamptons.
Exactly right. And, the Talkhouse as a whole, it's a terrific story. I mean, there's a great biography, as a matter of fact, of the Talkhouse. On the Talkhouse website. That would be a great future episode.
Yeah, that's an institution.
It is an institution. And, to see a live show there, it's really like you're in the performers in your living room.
In your living room. Yeah, exactly.
It's extraordinary. Now, but if we went, now this place we're going to touch on also a little bit briefly, a little further east from the Talkhouse. And this truly was a legend. This was a legendary place. I mean, everyone at one point in their life went to Cyril's, and Esperanza. Look at that smile. She probably.
Well, that was our Sunday night. Like after we would watch the cars rolling by. Back when really everything was, everybody went home on Sunday night.
Right.
We'd wave to everybody as they left.
Yeah, that's
going west.
That's probably was a great time to go. Like just watching that parade of people, like their weekends are over.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you're partying at Cyril's.
Exactly.
My daughters listen to this podcast. I probably shouldn't tell this story, but I remember a time. Now, again, my daughters are in their 30s now, but they're 2 years apart, and they were both of age at this point. So they were 18, 19, and 20, whatever, late teens, early 20s, whatever they were. I think early 20s at this point. But I've had a friend over. I said, why don't you go to Cyril's? I'll drop you off and just experience what the whole thing is. And I took them to Cyril's. And I took them in the afternoon. It was also Sunday nights, as to your point, was very cool time of day to go. But late afternoon was pretty good also, like walking right off of the beach. I mean, the cars were parked everywhere.
Yeah, that's the time.
I'm not going to go down the road of why it closed, the town really, and everything else. But they was standing 3-4 deep there.
I know.
It was
overwhelming.
But I remember dropping them off and picking them up. Let's just say their eyes were all glassy. So I think they had a pretty good time at Cyril's then. But and there were so many. Now, there was also Cavaneros in East Hampton Village, Albee Cavanero, which is now the Hampton Chutney.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't find out all that much about Cavaneros. Growing up in East Hampton Village, do you have any like real recollections of it, Esperanza?
Of Cavagnaros?
Yeah.
No, really, because I'm trying to think. It became Bucket's delicatessen. So that was more my recollection of what was in
Okay.
that building.
Oh, so Cavaneros was really earlier than
I think so.
like more
I think so.
60s and 50s, I guess.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I mean, by the mid 70s, maybe it was still there, but by the early 80s, I'm going to say no.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
But
you know, it's like it makes me think of that expression. We're talking about all these villages in East Hampton that, as the expression goes, especially about Montauk, that's it's a drinking village with a fishing problem.
Exactly. I always love that line. That's such a great line.
And you could say the same about Sag Harbor. I mean, how many bars there are there, right?
Exactly.
But they've been disappearing.
They have been disappearing. And, it's funny, we were talking about this before we got on, and we were just thinking about, I remember when I first started coming out here, there was Conscience Point and all of these kind of, they were really nightclubs more so than bars even.
Yeah.
But they really have disappeared. But Esperanza, I think a direction we should take this is, I want to let her use the word because she said this to me when we were talking about it before we went on the air. More of the artsy crowds, and
we were saying the literati, and then I said the glitterati, because they really do become the glitterati.
They did become the glitterati, but there were a few of these that really, and we're going to sort of go in ascending order. I guess this would be ascending, or maybe it's descending, but either way.
Well, we make the rules.
We make the rules here. But now one of them was Barons Cove. Now this has gone through a variety of lives over the years. There was a brief period of time. Now I'm going to draw Esperanza's memory when it was Rocco's La Playa.
Oh, gee, yeah.
Uh-oh. Wow, great faces being made right now. Wow.
That's the increasing upscaling of the area.
That was what
which is not really upscale. It just becomes a scene.
Okay, it was true. But Barons Cove was, I guess, its biggest claim to fame, and we're going to go way back in the day, was its probably most notable patron, and a damn good drinker, I might add, was the author John Steinbeck.
Yeah, not to mention a damn good writer.
And a damn good writer. Are we allowed to say damn on our Hamptons? I hope so.
Sure.
Okay. And his wife Elaine used to go there. And there have been others. And this, I read it I read this actually on Baron Cove's website. I mean, John and Elaine Steinbeck were common knowledge, but Paul Newman used to hang there. Art Garfunkel allegedly went there. But then we're going to just leave it there at Barons Cove, because there were really two bars out here. And now we're talking more late 40s, 50s, 60s, that were really the heavy hitters in terms of the glitterati. And I think we'll go west to east, Esperanza. And I think the first one that has to be mentioned was Bobby Van's. Not the Bobby Van.
Not the Bobby Van Steakhouse.
Not the Bobby Van Steakhouse.
With four outposts.
With four outposts, including Washington, Manhattan, and everything else. We're talking about the original Bobby Van's, which was founded in 1969.
Yeah.
And it was in what was World Pie. World Pie
just until this year,
just until this year. That was the original location. And Bobby Van's was really, you want to talk about a gathering place, this was a real literary kind of crowd here. We had James Jones, we had the writer John Knowles, Truman Capote. Now, There was a rumor that Truman Capote finished in cold blood at Bobby Van's.
Over his orange thingy.
Very good. Now, all right, Esperanza. That was she segued.
I had to say that. It made me laugh because he's such a character. But yeah, his favorite drink was an orange thingy. And I presume he made up that name, which, as it turns out, was 4 parts vodka, 1 part orange juice.
And I got to tell you, I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't lying about the happy hour. I really,
Are you getting thirsty?
I can barely concentrate because this is. Yeah, I hope I'm not an alcoholic, because I'm telling you, it's 7 days a week at this point. But I do sort of limit myself to 1 beer, usually either a Montauk or a Springs Brewery.
We keep it local. We keep it local.
Right, either Montauk or a Springs Brewery. But anyway, but. So this crowd, now Truman Capote, to Esperanza's point, it is true. He did go there. I mean, and literally he went there every day, Esperanza. And
right. I mean, was it he was waiting at the door sometimes for them to open at noon?
Yeah, but she is segueing like I think she may be drinking over there. I
really
do.
I do have my cocktail here.
We're over Zoom, but I'm looking beyond her shoulder to see if she's got anything there.
Sparkling water.
Looks like a sparkling water. But they're really... Truman Capote opened the place. I mean, literally waiting for, as Esperanza said, that orange thingy. And also in there, James Brady, George Plimpton, Willie Morris, who was the editor of Harper's at the time, a good old Southern boy, but really a literary giant. Harper's in the day at that point was huge. And then you also had the artists coming there. We had the poet Kenneth Koch, the artist Roy Lichtenstein, and William de Kooning.
Right. And Kurt Vonnegut. I mean,
Kurt Vonnegut was also over there, and it was a wild scene. And I like the quote. This was a quote by Bobby Van's wife, Marina, ex-wife. The original Bobby Van passed away. We'll touch on that in a minute. But Bobby Van's wife, Marina Van, who wrote, "The tendency of writers, artists, musicians, and other creative people to cluster with friends at the end of a long day of solitary work, accompanied by a drink or 3, help foster the image of the Hamptons as a boozy Bohemia by the sea." That's a pretty good quote.
It's a good image. Yeah.
It is a good image. And
a little scary, but good.
Hopefully they were walking home. Let's put it like that. But especially considering how dark it was. And these people were drinking at night in the winter, when it was 1960s Bridgehampton, early 70s Bridgehampton didn't have the population.
Well, I was just going to say desolate roads, not like how packed they are these days. Yeah.
No, exactly. And, Steinbeck and John and Elaine, would often come from the Barons Cove and head over there also. And so that was sort of what was going on there. And Bobby Van, I was reading this guy's bio. He passed away a few years ago now. He opened it when he was 26 years old. And we also didn't touch on, Joseph Heller, Catch 22.
Oh, yeah.
Was also, frequented it. And at 26 years old, Bobby Van, who was really a brilliant musician, a concert pianist, but opened this at a very young age in 1969 Bridgehampton. Again, this is, we're going back 53 years. It's not the Bridgehampton of today. It's the Bridgehampton of farm fields and everything else.
Yeah. Which I should say, I mean, one of my favorite books is this Kurt Vonnegut book. What is it called? A Widow for 1 Year, which is partly set in Sagaponack and Bridgehampton.
Oh, and did it sort of make references to, probably made references to Bobby Van?
Well, I think more setting the tone of how this place was around, beginning in the 50s and then going right into the 90s. So really kind of in a fictional way documents the change to the area.
Wow.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So now if you could, again, and we always try to do this on our Hamptons because I think we try to do it because it's so much fun to do. But when you transport yourself to a time and a place, now, if you could imagine going to 1969, early 70s Bridgehampton, 50 years ago, a much quieter Bridgehampton, particularly in the off season. I mean, Esperanza, we would walk in there. Bobby Van would be at the piano playing Gershwin, Cole Porter, Irving Berlin's, music.
Mhm.
And again, the cast of characters drinking, talking, Plimpton, James Jones, Bug Schulberg, Willie Morris, Irwin Shaw, de Kooning, Lichtenstein. That's a
Yeah.
lot of brain power.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
And, like that, you talk about, the wanting to be the fly on the wall kind of thing, to
Totally.
overhear what those kind of conversations, must have been like. And, it just, and the guy, Bobby Van, a young Bobby Van playing the piano with these, wow.
Surrounded by these, just incredible luminaries, really.
But sadly, Bobby Van, and this is a guy that did have some hard times. I mean, I think he had some drug problems and everything else, and he was, he was in failing health, but he sold the salon, the saloon in 1986. And it's and again, I know we're romanticizing the past. Yes, Paul Goldberger, we're not a museum. We know all of this, but it's now a very sanitized Bobby Van steakhouse with 4 outposts in the city, New York, in Washington. The original one, Bridgehampton is still there.
Right,
but,
right.
It's more a palm now.
Exactly. And you'll find locals, really, you'll find some locals there, or people from the shops, like, Gus from the Candy Kitchen goes there and has his martini after he closes.
Right. So
but it just, it's not what this picture that you just created in our mind's eye is not what you'll find, I think, there. It's it's a dinner crowd.
It's a dinner crowd. And again, it's not a crime. It's they changed with the times. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, it's he sort of burned out. I read a quote from him, like, towards the end of his life, where he was just saying how he gave an interview to the New York Times. Now, this is in 1987. So this was a year after he sold it, and was saying, this is a guy at this point, he was literally driving a taxi, just working occasionally as a pianist. He chose that kind of lifestyle. And he said, I'm still not sure about what I want to do. And I know what I don't want. And I don't want to return to playing in cafe society, mixing my music among the clamor and din. I don't want to share the spotlight anymore with people eating and talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there was a disillusionment there, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. And I guess, Esperanza, it was a moment in time. And if you were there, must have been a great moment in time.
Yeah.
But
even for him, but I'm sure,
right.
it wore on him. And
yeah, I mean, it was 18 years. I mean, he bought it when he was 26, sold it 17 years later at age 43. And, he died in his 60s. He died as, at a relatively young age. But that was it was really a cool story. But I think no place, no bar. Look at us. Oh God, I wish we got to do this on video so I could. I'm just watching Esperanza's the smile, like just.
Well, you just set it up so well.
Of her, you have to see it, like just inching up. Jungle Pizza, Esperanza. I mean, we'll get into all of its later day, what Jungle Pete's became, but we're going to start it at Jungle Pete's. We're in Springs. We're in my neck of the woods now. And Jungle Pete's was a tavern that has been operating more or less since 1934.
Continually. Yeah. Different incarnations, but different, that place,
very
that
different
site.
Incarnations. And again, you think about this. I mean, it's always hard for me to wrap my arms around this. And this is when I start swallowing my words. I get so excited to even talk about this, but imagine 1934 Fort Pond Boulevard in
I know,
Springs.
right. I mean, it must have been like a woodlot, really.
It-
You wonder how this place actually existed in the middle of the woods there.
who was supporting this place? What population was supporting
The
this place?
Bonackers.
The Bonackers, and to your
I mean,
point,
this is post-depression, right? So you're thinking
yes.
also, right? Like these are just fishermen, clammers, people that lived in the area.
Oh man,
Yeah.
my gosh, what a segue!
Oh,
But
gosh.
it was. And now you said something. What it must have been like a woodlot. And Pete Federico, he owned it with his wife Nina, who was, Pete was the front guy, the bartender. His wife Nina was the kitchen, the cook. But Pete thought it resembled the jungle. And the original name of the place was the Jungle Inn. But
Mhm.
over time, Pete became known, that probably happened organically, became known as Jungle Pete. And everyone's called the place Jungle Pete. So
Yeah,
that's
because
what it was.
we're going to go to Jungle Pete's because that was his place, right?
That was his place. And again, 1934 Springs. I mean, now Springs, obviously today is the densest hamlet within the town of East Hampton. But back then, I mean, it was a jungle. And I mean, it was an aptly named tavern, Esperanza, being called Jungle
The
Pete's.
Jungle Pete's.
Now, the original building burned to the ground in 44, but it was rebuilt. So the building that we see now, and it's still there, it's actually going to have a new life. There's a new owner coming in the near future. I think he's actually opening it officially, if I'm not mistaken, this week. But
I think so.
now, Esperanza, listen to this. So now, back in 44, each Saturday night, the place would become full of regular patrons. And listen to this, with their children in pajamas.
At times,
Esperanza,
I love it.
okay.
That's my kind of place.
That's your kind of place. Esperanza, I'm going to catch her off guard here for everybody. Have Owen and Carmen ever gone with you and Terry to a bar in their pajamas?
No, but I'm fairly certain I did. My brother and I did with my parents.
Oh, come on. To Jungle Pete's?
Not to Jungle Pete's,
but
but definitely we
Very
stayed
cool.
up. We had some late nights.
That's a really cool story. But what a great, again, like we put ourselves in a setting a few minutes ago in Bobby Van's, but how cool a setting is this, where the locals, the Bonackers, and believe me, in 1944, it was all Bonackers. There was that's who was here. They came into these places with their children in pajamas. I mean, the coolest thing. It was the gathering of the local community. It was just all about that.
But this is something, considering that we were talking about this earlier, Irwin, that, I said, there's no place to go dancing here. And
right.
I know that like Bess Rattray has written about that in recent months or the past year and a half, about there being no place to go dancing. And here at Jungle Pete's, the music started at 9 p.m.
That's right.
With dancing straight through till 3 a.m.
I mean, come on.
And youth, and it's there's more nightlife in 1940s Springs than there is now.
Something? That is, wow. That is. Sorry for the dead air, but I got to tell you, that one threw me off guard. But it really is true, Esperanza. Now I'm more of like an early bird. I don't claim to be the biggest night owl in the world, but to Esperanza's point, that's true. This kind of thing doesn't really exist right now. Maybe it will come back. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, I just say this, it's an observation, considering that the reputation of this area is like such a party scene. And honestly, I don't see that. But anyway, I just found that notable.
That really is notable. That's true. 1940 Springs, there was more nightlife than there is in 2022. East Hampton.
But the most notable visitor. Oh, sorry.
We're going to get to that in 1 second. But
Oh, I love Nina.
Did you know Nina?
No,
okay.
But I mean, I love the story.
I love the story of Nina. Now, Nina was Pete's wife, and I love this story. This really says a lot. Nina was known for accommodating the men returning from a hunting trip and they would come to the back door with venison, with ducks, and Nina would cook it.
Yeah. They would,
For the
have a
family.
meal with their wives, and she would make it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just such a great, like, that would never ever happen. Well, first of all, the hunting. I mean, that's just
No, exactly. Exactly.
Anyway.
It would never happen. But I guess you can't really discuss Jungle Pete's without discussing Jungle Pete's heyday, which was really the 40s and 50s because of the arrival of Jackson Pollock. Now Jackson Pollock's drinking is legendary. We know this. Sad. I mean, it ultimately cost him his life, but it has been documented that he spent virtually every night from the late 40s until he died on Fireplace Road in August of 56 at Jungle Pete's. And it was also heard that he used to sleep it off in the jungle, right? that was the woodlot, or whatever we want to call it, right next to Jungle Pete's. But this was really like the heyday of it. And Jackson's friends and were not only just the artists and the musicians of the day, but it was the baymen and the Bonackers. They were all, that was the other part of Jungle Pete's, Esperanza. I mean, yes, de Kooning was there, and Lee Krasner and Howard Kanovitz and Larry Rivers played horns there. But it was about the friendship of the artists and
the locals. Yeah. I mean, not that the artists weren't local eventually, but it just that mix of, again, it goes even what we were saying about Murfs. There was I don't know, there's not that, I don't find that atmosphere very often these days. And that was something that I appreciated back then.
Exactly.
Not that I was a contemporary of Jackson
No,
Pollock's, but
of
you know
course.
what I mean.
No, of course. But, like you read these stories of how, Aline B. Talmadge, who lived with her husband, Richard Talmadge. Now, these are Talmadges, one of the oldest families out here. They lived next door to Pollock and Lee Krasner. Richard was a plumber. Aline was whatever she was. This is 1940 Springs. But I loved her quote when she said, the artists had their own circles. But when they came to Jungle Pete's, de Kooning, Jackson, all of them, they communicated with the fishermen and farmers. The men came back from the war and were very cosmopolitan. This was really telling for me. They didn't find what the artists were doing to be strange.
Yeah.
They were just, and
I'll say, even if they hadn't gone to war, I think that my experience of the Bubs was, just really kind of not a backwater, it wasn't like the backwater mentality that you would really think. They were just kind of open, simple, no nonsense people.
Yeah,
just kind of looked at you and go, okay, you want to do that? Fine.
I mean, Esperanza, the Bubs were not Deliverance. I mean, these
exactly. That's what I mean.
Okay, right.
There
these
were some very smart people out.
These were very, they were.
I mean, generations old to begin with, also.
Exactly right. So, but I also, reading again with Mrs. Talmadge was saying how Jungle Pete's attracted a bar crowd, and Mrs. Talmadge said that yes, there were, and this is her words, ladies of the evening there, but the place, and this is spoken like a true Bonacker, you got to love her. The place was no bucket of blood. Yeah. There was drinking, but there was no scuffling, she said. And the restaurant attracted upstanding people as well.
Right.
Even if the church ladies didn't like it much. But I guess to sort of wrap this up, all of these places, it was just so evocative, of this time. There was a quote here, how they referred to these places, Jungle Pete's, Bobby Van's. It was almost like, now this is a term from the 50s and 60s, the beat generation.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what it was. Very.
Just the bohemian aspect of it. Yeah. Artistic, cultural,
And they just, and again, they
could move very freely between all these different circles, really, as she said. Yeah.
These artists, again, many of, obviously a lot of them were starving artists, but even after they weren't starving anymore, de Kooning, he never left Springs. At the point he was living in Springs, he could have lived anywhere in the world, with the artist paintings he's selling for, but he wanted to ride his bicycle and live amongst the common folk, amongst the Bonackers, the farmers,
Just a more simple
all
way
of
of
the
life.
people, all of the people we always talk about.
That's all of the people. That's what we seek being out here, right?
God, Esperanza, that was, man. I have a smile. I almost have to. I have to admit, I almost can't wait to wrap this episode up so I can go grab my beer. But this
Cheers.
really, cheers. But that was a fantastic journey down to these places.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you thought of this, because you're you think about these places and you know about them, but you brought in some history here that I was not familiar with, and I'm really it's enriched me.
It really
and made me thirsty.
And it made me thirsty too. And look, and there are some places that we will ultimately get to at another time. Again, we spoke about the Talk House. There was Club Swamp in Wainscott, which is really an episode of itself because it's symbolic of so much more. But we're going to have to leave that for another day. But Esperanza, that was terrific. Thank you. And listen, after we sign off, we should have a virtual happy hour.
Let's do it.
Okay. Terrific.
Great, Irwin.
Thanks, Esperanza.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.